Jane Elizabeth Lathrop was born in Albany, New York. She was the daughter of shopkeeper Dyer Lathrop and Jane Ann Lathrop. She attended the Albany Academy for Girls, the longest-running girls' day school in the United States. Jane was the second or third child among 6 or 7 siblings. Jane Elizabeth Lathrop married Leland Stanford on September 30th, 1850. The Stanfords lived in Port Washington, Wisconsin, until 1852, when a fire destroyed Leland Stanford's law library and other property. They then returned to Albany, New York. Leland Stanford went to California to join his brothers in commercial ventures related to the California Gold Rush, while Jane remained in Albany with her family. He returned in 1855, and the following year they moved to San Francisco, where he pursued large-scale commercial enterprises. Leland Stanford co-founded the Central Pacific Railroad and served as its president from 1861 until his death in 1893. He was also president of the Southern Pacific Railroad, served as governor of California from 1862 to 1863, and was a United States Senator from California from 1885 until his death in 1893. On May 14, 1868, at the age of 39, Jane Stanford gave birth to their only child, a son, named Leland Stanford Jr. Tragically, he died at the age of 15 on March 13, 1884, of typhoid fever, while the family was in Florence, Italy. Following their son's death, Jane and Leland Stanford sought ways to memorialize him. In November of 1885, they laid the foundational plans for the Leland Stanford Jr. University, which opened on October 1, 1891. After Leland Sr.'s death, on June 21, 1893, Jane Stanford took control of the university. During this period, the university faced financial struggles, and the trustees suggested a temporary closure to resolve tax and legal issues. From 1893 to 1898, Jane received $10,000 per month from the university as its co-founder. The estate left probate in 1898, giving her significant legal control over the university until her death. Jane Stanford played a crucial role in shaping Stanford University, advocating for the arts and admission of women from its inception. She was a strong proponent of academic freedom, but controversially sought and succeeded in having economist Edward A. Ross fired. Ross had made speeches supporting Democrat William Jennings Bryan, promoted collectivist economic ideas, expressed racist views against Chinese American laborers, and endorsed eugenics policies. In 1897, Jane traveled to London during Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, hoping to sell her rubies and other jewels to raise funds for the university. Disappointed by the offers, she returned home with most of her jewelry. In 1905, she directed the university trustees to sell her jewels after her death and use the funds for a permanent endowment dedicated to purchasing books and publications. This endowment, initially valued at $500,000, is now worth about $20 million. Items bought through the Jewel Fund displayed a bookplate depicting a romanticized Jane Stanford offering her jewels to Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom. On January 14, 1905, at her Nob Hill mansion in San Francisco, Jane Stanford drank mineral water that tasted bitter. Prompted by her maid, she quickly forced herself to vomit. Both the maid and her secretary agreed that the water tasted strange, so they sent it to a pharmacist for analysis. A few weeks later, the results showed that the water had been poisoned with a lethal dose of strychnine. Stanford immediately moved out of her mansion and vowed never to return. Elizabeth Richmond, the maid, fell under suspicion and was dismissed. Richmond had previously worked in Britain and reportedly entertained Stanford's staff with stories of English aristocrats being poisoned by their servants. The Harry Morse Detective and Patrol Agency was hired for a discreet investigation. Detectives put Richmond under surveillance and searched Bay Area pharmacy records for suspicious strychnine purchases, but found none. They discovered that the mansion was rife with petty staff, jealousies, graft, and intrigue, but they could not identify the culprit or motive for the attempted murder. Depressed by the belief that someone had tried to kill her and suffering from a cold, Stanford decided to sail to Hawaii with plans to continue to Japan. The Stanford party left San Francisco for Honolulu on February 15, 1905. On the evening of February 28th, at the Moana Hotel on the island of Oahu, Stanford requested baking soda to settle her stomach. Her personal secretary, Bertha Berner, who had been a trusted employee for 20 years and was the only other person present during the previous incident, prepared the solution, which Stanford drank at 11:15 p.m. Stanford cried out for her servants and hotel staff to call a physician, declaring that she had lost control of her body and believed she had been poisoned again. This time, attempts to induce vomiting were unsuccessful. Robert Cutler, a retired Stanford neurologist, detailed the events in his book, The Mysterious Death of Jane Stanford. When Francis Howard Humphreys, the hotel's physician, arrived, he tried to administer a solution of bromine and chloral hydrate. Stanford, in severe pain, exclaimed, "My jaws are stiff. This is a horrible death to die." She then experienced a tectonic spasm, progressing to severe rigidity. Her jaws clamped shut, her thighs opened widely, her feet twisted inward, her fingers and thumbs clenched into tight fists, and her head drew back. Finally, her respiration ceased. Jane Stanford had died from strychnine poisoning. The San Francisco Evening Bulletin announced the news with a dramatic March 1st headline, "Mrs. Stanford dies, poisoned." Forensic chemical analysis confirmed the presence of pure strychnine in the bicarbonate she had ingested and traces of the poison in her tissue. After 3 days of testimony, the coroner's jury quickly concluded that she had died from strychnine, introduced into a bottle of bicarbonate soda with felonious intent by some person or persons unknown. Testimony revealed that the bottle had been purchased in California, after Richmond had been dismissed, was accessible to anyone in Stanford's residence while the party was packing, and had not been used until the night of her death. The jury's rapid verdict sparked controversy. Stanford University President David Starr Jordan fueled the controversy by hiring a local doctor, Ernest Coniston Waterhouse, to dispute the poisoning diagnosis. Jordan claimed that Stanford had died of heart failure, a diagnosis considered medically preposterous given her distinctive strychnine poisoning symptoms. In his book, Robert Cutler concluded that there is ample evidence that Mrs. Stanford was poisoned, that she was given good care, and that Jordan went over there to hush it up. Stanford had a difficult relationship with Jordan, and was reportedly planning to remove him from his position as president of the university's board of trustees at the time of her death. Jordan's motives remained uncertain, but he had written to the new president of Stanford's Board of Trustees, offering various explanations for Jane Stanford's death and suggesting they choose the most suitable one. The university leadership likely believed avoiding scandal was paramount. The cover-up was so effective that the likelihood of her murder was largely overlooked by historians and commentators until the 1980s. In 2022, Stanford University historian Richard White concluded that Stanford was likely poisoned by her employee, Bertha Berner, who was present at both poisoning incidents. The source of the strychnine was never identified. Jane Stanford was buried alongside her husband, Leland, and their son at the Stanford Family Mausoleum on the Stanford campus. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to join our community. We upload every Monday and Thursday at 4 p.m. For more content like this, be sure to check out our other videos on the channel. You can also follow us on our other social media platforms for uploads and updates. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.